guys, it's me. Just wanted to give you a little update. I know I've been doing a lot of compilation videos on YouTube lately because I haven't been able to film. I've actually been really sick. I had my wisdom teeth out. It was a really complicated surgery. They had to remove bone, so I couldn't talk. I was swollen for like a week and a half. Then I had a jaw infection from that, which knocked me out again. And then I was hospitalized after that for a completely different reason. So I'm actually pretty sick, still recovering, still healing. I know I look okay right now, but I'm not feeling that great. So compilation videos are still gonna be coming for a little while, but then new content will be happening soon. Thank you so much for being patient with me. And thank you for all the well wishes and sweet messages. I love you guys so much. You are family, you are the best, and I will see you very soon. So just before I get into the points that I want to cover, while I was researching for Coraline, I found this really weird conspiracy theory that I don't fully understand. So if you guys get it, please comment down below what it means. But there are so many different articles saying that Pennywise and the other mother from Coraline are like the same being, if you will. They're not the same person, but they're the same species of like creature. Because you know how they're both, I think, spiders? Apparently they're from like the same universe and they're the same kind of creature, which I find like really strange because like to me Pennywise is a clown and the other mother is like a totally different thing. But it was saying how they both like entice children and kind of lure them in and then they try to like eat them. So I found that really intriguing. If you guys know more about that conspiracy, please comment it down below because I'm so intrigued by that, but I'm also like very confused. Okay, so the first symbol in this film that we're gonna talk about is the face on the dollar bill. So well-known director Henry Selick is best known for James and the Giant Peach and The Nightmare Before Christmas. And he also spent quite a long time working on the film Coraline. So what's cool is that the dollar bill that is given as a bad tip to one of the movers has Selick's face on the dollar bill, which you can see. And it says that before the audience even sees the real Coraline, they're seeing the director of the film without even realizing it, which is super cool because as a kid watching this film, you just see a face on a dollar bill, but you don't really take in like who it is. I feel like in a child's mind, you don't really care about those details too much, but it's really cool because it's the director. I feel like after you watch my video and you find out all of these different symbols, you guys should go watch Coraline and see if you can find the parts that I'm talking about because I always do that after I make these videos. The next point is the message in a song. The song that the other father sings to Coraline when she first meets him has a purpose. It's a warning sign as to what is about to happen. Now, the other father almost freaked me out more than the other mother did. There's just something so off about him. I'm pretty sure the other father is actually just made out of a pumpkin. Am I correct? So that's why he's so like off and goofy. It's because he's not a real human. He's an object that the other mother turned into a father, you know what I mean? So he always really freaked me out. And you also learn that he's kind of one of the good guys that the other mother creates. So he's secretly trying to warn Coraline. So we're gonna go through what his lyrics say. It says, making up a song about Coraline. She's a peach, she's a doll, she's a pal of mine. She's as cute as a button in the eyes of everyone who's ever laid their eyes on Coraline. When she comes around exploring, Mom and I will never make it boring. Our eyes will be on Coraline. So maybe when you've watched this movie, you think, hey, it's just a charming, fun song. But when you actually listen to the lyrics, he's warning Coraline about the button eyes. And I'll admit, I never caught that when I was listening to that song, so that's really interesting. The next point is the bug wallpaper, which I also find so fascinating because I never caught this. Like, I never noticed this at all. Everything in Coraline's real world is supposed to look boring and lackluster because it's intended to be the opposite to the world that the other mother creates. So basically everything in Coraline's normal life is supposed to be gray and boring and dull, and that is what entices Coraline to enjoy and like the other mother's world because her world is colorful, there's music, there's food. So the film is trying to make the them opposites, you know what I mean? There are multiple subtle hints in the real world that foreshadow what's going to end up happening during the second half of the movie in the Beldams world. One of those details includes the wallpaper that's in the living room of Coraline's home. Have you ever thought of looking at the wallpaper? Because I didn't until now. The wallpaper in the living room is an ugly blue-gray color that looks to have some throwaway pattern on it. But if you look closely at what that pattern is, it's actually a bug print pattern. And it can be difficult to see because the bugs are very, very faint, so you have to really look to see them. But it's intended to foreshadow the other mother's desire for insects. If you think about it, the other mother never eats the meals she has with Coraline. The only time she eats is when she's able to eat bugs. And as you saw, that only happens later on in the movie when she shows Coraline her real self, which is like a spider. So the fact that Coraline's wallpaper has these very faint bug patterns all over it is so creepy, and next time I watch the movie, I'm definitely gonna look out for that. The next point that you may never have thought about is about the soundtrack of the movie. When you listen to the songs from the soundtrack, it kind of sounds like it's a beautiful but kind of eerie choir of children singing. And a lot of people have wondered if maybe it's a French choir because the words sound very French if you're not listening to it like in detail. What sounds like a foreign language is in fact complete gibberish. And I actually found out about this quite a while ago. I don't know if I was watching Coraline's special features or maybe a YouTube video, but it is a choir of children and people singing, but they're just singing gibberish. It's a totally made up language just for the film, which I find is really cool and almost makes the film even that more like eerie, you know what I mean? The next thing we're gonna talk about is Mr. Bobinski's medal. Even while wearing a dirty tank top, Mr. Bobinski still has his medal all shiny and pinned to his chest. It's a medal given to the nuclear cleanup team after the Chernobyl nuclear disaster in 1986. His medal even says participant in the cleanup campaign and has an image of a drop of blood on it, and the drop has 3 lines, each depicting a different level of radiation. This is like so deep, and I feel like when you watch this as a kid, and even some adults may not have known that, but like researching it, like what? That is so deep for a child's film. Due to being exposed to radiation for such a long time during the cleanup, this could explain his blue color and his desire for eating raw beets. So it's trying to say that because he was exposed to so much radiation, that's kind of why he's a little bit bonkers, just a little bit, and why he's like blue. Because I did wonder that as a kid. I was like, why is this guy such a strange color? But it's because he has a lot of history. The next point is the button key, which I feel like is kind of an obvious symbol. After Coraline tells her parents about the other mother and the other father, her mother locks the door and very badly hides the key. So Coraline finds the key hanging above the doorway in the kitchen, and there's a button shape on the end of the key, as we all see, and that is kind of foreshadowing the other mother's world. So I feel like this symbol is maybe the one that everyone would already know. The key opens the portal door that leads to a life of button eyes. And I kind of want to know from all of you guys, if you found this key, would you open the door in general? Because I feel like I definitely would. And once you saw that tunnel, would you crawl through? Would you tell your parents? Like, what would you do in Coraline's situation? I'm honestly genuinely interested, because some of my friends that I've asked this to, they were like, oh, there's no way I would go through. But I feel like if it was me, I'd probably wake up my sister and we'd both go. Like, I feel like that's the way I would do it. And then I would tell my parents. Like, I wouldn't keep the secret, but I would go first and then tell my mom and dad, you know what I mean? The next point is the lightning hand, which I didn't see when I first watched the movie, but I definitely saw like the second or third time I watched it. So I've already known about this before I made this video, but maybe you guys haven't. So when Coraline is visiting her other mother, the mother creates this thunderstorm, and while Coraline is standing by the window, you can see that outside lightning strikes, and when the lightning happens, it's in the shape of the other mother's hand. There's probably a picture I can show you guys, but it's so creepy and it happens in like a split second, so you really have to be paying attention to see that hand come down. But that's also kind of like another way of foreshadowing that the other mother is very bad, and Coraline does not know yet at that point in the film. And it says this image also appears in the tree branches in Beldam's world when the black cat is speaking to Coraline for the first time. I don't think I ever noticed a hand in the tree branches, so that's really interesting as well. The next part we're going to talk about is the framed silhouettes, which I never noticed. It makes me so frustrated reading some of these because I've seen Coraline like, gosh, 50 times, and I never noticed a lot of this stuff. And I thought I was like a pro at the whole Coraline movie. So the ghost children in the house don't make an appearance until closer to the end of the movie. You know, the part where the beldam throws Coraline behind the mirror and then she meets them. That scene was so scary to me as a child, by the way. But hints of the ghost children are actually scattered around the house before Coraline even meets them. The silhouettes of the children appear on the wall in the dining room in the other world. The three silhouettes are there for anyone to view, which is sort of messed up and makes the beldam even more creepy because not only did she eat away the lives of these children, but she has them displayed on the wall. Why? The next point is so weird to me, and I don't think I ever noticed this either, but it's the unexplained ketchup stain on Coraline's dad's shirt. That sounded like a tongue twister. One of the most memorable lines in Coraline comes when Mel offers Coraline lunch and she says, "How do you feel about a mustard ketchup salsa wrap for lunch?" Which, ew, sounds disgusting, and that's why it's one of the most like known lines of the film. But ketchup comes back into play when Coraline's father, Charlie, is putting her to bed. A lot of viewers never saw that on his shirt there was this huge red ketchup stain, and what's even weirder is that the film never explains how it got there. It's just there and then we just forget about it. It's so strange. Okay, here we go. No one ever really brings up the other YB, one of my favorites. I got a total chill when you see his clothes blowing in the wind later in the movie. Both the YBs were my favorites. The other one more so. It's strange how no one really talks about them, or how the cat could be the other YB's spirit or conscience. Oh my gosh. You know what? I just realized I don't think I ever mentioned YB in my other Coraline video. And it's not because I don't like him, I just never found a ton of theories on YB. But he's awesome, and it's interesting how you like the other YB better. And you know what? I think I'm kind of with you on that. I feel like the YB in real life, he talks a lot, he's kind of annoying, but the YB in the other mother's world, he's very helpful and kind, and he seems to be one of the only good people in the other mother's world, you know what I mean? And the fact that you said the cat could be the other YB's consciousness, that's kind of a cool idea. I don't know if they're directly related at all, but it's a really cool thought. But yeah, there was never any hate against YB. He's a cool dude. If you guys have any YB conspiracy theories, definitely put them down below. I'm interested to read. Alright, next one. Here's something. Is the painting of the boy that was in the house, was he the first one that died? Oh, do you mean the painting of the boy with like the ice cream cone? Are you saying like, was he one of the boys that went to the other mother's world? I don't know. Like, I don't know if that was a painting of one of the previous children in the house. I never thought of that. Whenever I saw that painting, it didn't hit me that deep to think about who he was. So that's really interesting. If any of you guys know who that boy in the painting is, definitely comment it down below. But I do know the painting changes in the movie, so that's also kind of creepy. Coraline's garden at the end of the scene when planting flowers, when the camera zooms out, the shape of her garden is the other mother's face, whereas in the other world, the garden has Coraline's face? Is that actually a thing? Oh my gosh, I'm mind blown. I've never noticed that. So it's weird. So Coraline, when she's planting flowers, it's the other mother, but the other mother has her as a face, so it's like they're always just connected in some way. That is so creepy, and if I can find like screenshots of that, I'll definitely put it in, but I never noticed that ever. It's so cool being able to like read your opinions and your theories because it's just like, it's mind-blowing. I'm just curious because how did the mom, the normal mom, know that the button key was the key, like for that door? I don't know. That's like a question I've wondered as well. How did she know? That's really strange. This movie, like, you can just make endless conspiracy theories about it because there's so many questions. It's like they purposely made this film to like leave you confused, you know what I mean? The world is actually a figment of her imagination because when the mom unlocks the room, she doesn't have enough imagination to go through it. That's kind of an interesting concept, and it also kind of makes sense too because it just means that only children can access the door because children's minds are a lot different than adult minds. You know, they're more imaginative, so I guess the adult mind, like in this movie, doesn't have enough like imagination to go through the door. And like that makes sense because the other mother doesn't want adults. She only wants children anyways. So either it's magic and she makes it invisible to adults, or it's just like the imagination. I'm rewatching Coraline right now and I noticed something. The second she goes to the other mother says, "Can you go fetch your father? I bet he's as hungry as a pumpkin." Oh! Oh, yeah, you're so right. I remember that line, and it's just foreshadowing that he's actually a pumpkin. And that whole thing is so sad, like to think about how this poor pumpkin from the garden became a human, and this pumpkin felt human emotions, and then he went back to a pumpkin, and oh my gosh, I really feel bad for the other father. But yeah, she like hints at the whole time that he's not a real human being. Isn't that creepy? There is another conspiracy theory saying Coraline never left the other world. You should do a video about that. I think I've heard about that theory. I don't really know, the depths of that theory, but maybe she never left it. Like people were saying, I think people were saying that the other mother was disguising her world to look like Coraline's normal world, but she never actually escaped, which is really depressing to think about, and I hope that's not real because everything in my heart wants to tell me she actually got back to her normal world. But oh my gosh, if you think about the fact that her garden is the face of the other mother at the end of the film, maybe that's a hint like, hey, you're still in my world. Oh my gosh, guys, I bet you never thought of that. After watching many theories about Coraline, the other mother is just a puppet and the real bad guy is the cat. Imagine if that world was like all made up from this cat, and that's why the cat knows everything, that's why the cat's like walking around guiding Coraline. It'd be really creepy because the cat's always this mysterious character in both Coraline's real world and her like fake other world. So it'd be really creepy if the cat was the mastermind behind all of this and it wasn't the other mother. That was just something like he created. I don't know. I mean, that's a pretty out there theory, but I don't know. One you missed was that in the scene where Coraline and the other mother were talking about games, they each had a sparkle in their eye when they said game. Really? I never noticed that. That's really interesting. Like these are like the details, you know what I mean? Stuff that you would just like never see. The hand also appears when Coraline drank the tea to see her future, and the lady was like, I see a very peculiar hand. Yes, I did notice that, and I think that was supposed to be kind of like an obvious point in the movie. And it's funny because the other lady was like, I see a giraffe. But it's also like interesting symbolism because one way it's a giraffe, and when you flip it upside down, it's a sinister hand, right? So the giraffe could be like Coraline's normal world, but when you flip that world upside down, underneath is like this whole like creepy other world, you know? Does that make sense? Am I a genius? When you watch the scene where Coraline and YB throw the key and rock down the well looks like the tunnel that Coraline uses to enter the other world. Yes, I have seen a couple things saying that, and that's probably just another like symbolism, and a lot of people were saying that they hope that's not like another access to the world because no one's ever seen what's actually down there. So I hope the other mother can't exit through that tunnel, you know what I mean? Especially since, didn't they throw the key down there too? Imagine if like she gets the key back and can go through the house. I don't know, but I do see the similarities between the tunnel and the sewer, or not the sewer, the well. The ketchup stain, which I assume is on the father's shirt, is actually pizza sauce. In an unreleased version of the movie, he talks about having pizza with Coraline. Oh, so like a deleted scene, I guess? That's kind of cool. So it's just pizza sauce. When Coraline is at the old ladies, one of them opens a chest of old candy labeled with years. And I guess she's saying that's the years the ghost children were captured. Oh my gosh. 1921 was the tall ghost girl. 1936 was the boy ghost. 1960 was the sweet ghost girl, which makes sense seeing as their clothes match these years. Oh my gosh, I never caught that. Is that really a thing? You guys are so smart. That's why I'm doing this video, because I never noticed any of this stuff. So we're not going to be specifically talking about Coraline the movie itself, but we're going to be talking about small doors that people found in their houses in real life that led somewhere unexpected. Because if you think of a Coraline door in like reality, it's obviously not going to go to your other mother's house. You know, that's all make-believe and made up. Or is it? I don't know. It could be in real life. But to me, a Coraline door in real life is just a door you find in your house unexpectedly that leads somewhere. So I'm going to be talking about 4 cases where people have these actual doors in their houses, and in each case they lead somewhere different, and I'm pretty sure every single one of these cases are so creepy, so be prepared. Okay, so this very first case was a couple named Jason and Carrie Brown. It goes in these. Maybe I'm getting sick. So this couple purchased their new home in 2015, so not very long ago, and they were shocked when they eventually discovered a secret corridor disguised as a bookcase. So this door was hidden in a bookcase in one of the rooms, which is totally unexpected, and it sounds like something from like medieval times, like in the old castle movies and fantasy movies that you watch, like the bookcase moves and there's a different room in there. You know what I mean? You know what I mean. But this couple found this doorway in their bookcase, and their first reaction was excitement. It was kind of thrilling for them to find something so weird, and I feel like I would have the same response. Like if I found a tiny door somewhere in my house, I feel like I'd be like, oh my gosh, like where does this go? So it wouldn't be fear, it'd be more like curiosity and excitement. So that was the first feeling that this couple had when they saw this door. Like it says, they were understandably thrilled and intrigued, because after all, this is the kind of thing that leads people to bury treasure and hidden money, right? Like they were hoping that maybe the previous owners put something in this room that was really valuable. But unfortunately, that is not what happened with this couple, and you guys don't even want to know what I'm gonna say next. Within this passageway, they found a note that was placed on the ground, and there's actually a picture of this note that I'm gonna put on the screen and read to you guys. And the beginning of the note sounds really exciting. It says, hello, if you're reading this, then you found the secret room. So this couple's reading this note, they're like, oh my gosh, there must be something really cool in here. But once they continued reading, it turned into an absolute nightmare. It says, I owned this house for a short while, and it was discovered to have a serious mold problem, one that actually made my children very sick, to the point that we had to move out. So I would advise you to check into this. If you'd like to send me a message, I'd love to hear who eventually got this house, because I really liked the house and have fond memories of it. I can also tell you more about the mold problem. I can be reached by email, welcome to the 21st century at, I'm not gonna put it in, blank hotmail.com. Just put 6 Whitten Street in the subject line so I know not to delete the email. Sincerely, George. And he wrote this in 2004. So this note has been sitting in this hidden room since 2004, and keep in mind, this couple found it in 2015. And what's so bizarre is that this person who wrote this letter, his name was George, he thinks that he's doing them a favor by saying like, hey, this house has a mold problem, we had to move out. If you want to reach me, here's my email. Instead of like telling them before they bought the house. I feel like that's so messed up. And what's so scary to think about is that if they didn't find this doorway in the bookcase, how long would they have lived in the house with that mold problem? Like literally, when you open the door to that bookcase, there's mold in the corners, there's mold behind the walls, there was just mold everywhere. And especially black mold, that can make you seriously sick. And just like it says in the note, this guy's children were sick because they lived there. So why in his conscience would he think, hey, we're just gonna let the next people move in and not even tell them until they find the note? I don't know, guys. This just freaked me out so much, because you always kind of hope for the best in people and that they'll be honest with you. But the fact is, a lot of the time people are just trying to sell their house, and they'll keep any secret that they can so that you'll buy it. That's just the unfortunate truth of life. Like when I moved into this house, there were a lot of things wrong with it that we weren't initially told until we were here for like the first 2 months, and we found there were so many things broken, like the sink. We were just finding all kinds of stuff, and a lot of people do that. So I just hope I don't find like some little door in my house with mold in it, because that would just be, no, that's not okay. But the previous owners of this house did seem pretty nice, so I'm not too worried. My nose actually feels stuffed. Like I think I might actually be getting sick, guys. Oh my gosh. Do I sound like really nasally right now? I don't know. Anyways, let's move on to the next one, which is just as equally terrifying. And this one also has a couple pictures of what they actually found. These are real pictures. When a pair of people doing some house hunting made their way into the basement of this home, they discovered something very disturbing that no one would ever want to discover. Behind the basement stairs, there was a bedroom. And I'll show you guys pictures, but as you're walking down these basement stairs, there's actually holes in some of the stairs for like breathing room. And then when you actually go under the stairs and see see this little tiny gross bedroom. There's stuff written all over the walls, like in almost kid writing. It says on the back of the stairs there were notes that read, "Stop watching me," "No watching Isaiah through the hole," and most ironically, no writing or drawing on the walls. And like I just said, they discovered that holes had been carved into the stairs so that whoever stayed in the small room could look out, or so maybe someone could look in. Oh my gosh, I never thought about it that way. I thought maybe they were breathing holes. But yeah, these holes could have been used to like look out from under the stairs, or maybe whoever put this kid under the stairs could look in. Now it sounds very sinister, and after these people actually looked into it, apparently it was just an area that kids would go when they had timeouts. So like when their parents would be upset with them, they'd be like, okay, go under the stairs for 10 minutes and think about what you've done. So apparently it wasn't like a really bad situation that you might have thought right away. It was just parents like using that space as a timeout room, which is still super weird to me, especially because they've carved holes in the stairs and like it's weird. I don't know, the second I saw these pictures, I got this horrible feeling in my stomach, but as long as it wasn't used to actually keep a kid in there for days and it was just a timeout zone, then it's not as bad as I envisioned. But whenever kids write on the walls, it's just so creepy. This third one that we're gonna talk about is also very creepy, and then we have one more after that that's actually kind of cool. So we're doing one more creepy one and then a cool one. So there is this boy who has the username 2Bite Brownie. 2Bite Brownie, which I'm really hungry for some 2Bite brownies now. But this is his username because he posted his story on Imgur. I could never say that. Imager? I think my whole life I've been saying Imager, but I'm just dumb, so don't listen to me. Anyways, he posted this discovery on Imgur, whatever this site is. Imgur. It says, 2Bite Brownie doesn't like staying home alone very much anymore, and it's all thanks to an accidental discovery he made after he and his brother were wrestling too hard one day. It says they were jumping around and fighting on their parents' bed when 2Bite Brownie fell off and hit his parents' bookcase just a little bit too hard. To his surprise, a little door in the bookcase actually opened up and revealed a set of spiral stairs that went downwards. Plucking up the courage to investigate, he and his brother traveled down the spiral staircase behind the bookshelf and found something even creepier than their initial discovery. They found a crawl space down there, and one that clearly housed a living person somewhat recently. So it's not like they discovered, you know, a crawl space that was unused for years and years. It was like fresh, because they found a fresh banana peel sitting inside the crawl space. It wasn't one that was rotting or old or stinky. It was like freshly eaten in this crawl space. And like, can I just say, imagine just being home alone with your sibling and you find a little door in your wall that has a spiral staircase going down? I don't think so. In the hidden space, they found pieces of candy from Halloween and a banana peel that looked pretty fresh, like I just said. Someone was living in our walls, 2Bite Brownie said in his post. That was my Halloween candy. Someone came into my room, took my bag, and brought it down there. Oh, that is so creepy. I feel like, I don't know, I feel like I know if my Halloween candy went missing. Like, wouldn't you guys? Like, if I had it in a bag in my room and one day it was gone, like, I would suspect something was up. He said they quickly realized the severity of what they had discovered and got out of the room as fast as they could. I wouldn't even have gone down there if I saw that. They told their parents and alerted the authorities, who later found some dolls, a skeleton key, and a carving of an elephant in that crawl space. And the most terrifying part of the whole thing is that there weren't any other entranceways into this crawl space. The only way to get in there was through that spiral staircase in their parents' bedroom, meaning that the person would have had to have broken into their house to get down there. So I don't know, that's just so creepy. I have a crawl space in my basement, and I know when I first discovered it when I moved here, everyone was like, oh my gosh, like someone could be living down there, and like, don't worry, there's not anyone living down there. But I don't know, something about crawl spaces just freak me out. But anyways, before we finish this video, I want to show you one that I thought was really cool. It's called the Narnia Playroom, and these parents made this for their older kid, and I'm so jealous because if I had this as a kid, it would be so amazing. So it just looks like a wardrobe like you see in Narnia, but when you open it, it has all of your clothes, and if you keep walking through like the kids do in the movie, you enter this like playroom and Aslan's on the back of the wall. Like, it looks so magical, and how cool is that? Like, these parents must have taken so long to like paint the walls and to put all of this effort into this room. That is so cool. So speaking of all these Coraline doors, it reminds me of something that happened in my childhood. I used to go to this friend's house. Let's call her Sasha? I don't know. So I used to go to my friend Sasha's house all of the time, and I'd sleep over there constantly. And one day she was like, hey, want to see something really cool? So she opened her closet door, and at the very back of her closet, there was this tiny little Coraline type door. And when you opened it, it was this long, dark tunnel that just went on and on and on. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, where does this go? So she's like, follow me. So she goes through this door, and I'm crawling behind her. It's a very small space, and I'm like super claustrophobic, but she's going through, and finally I start to see this light at the end of the tunnel. I'm like, oh my gosh, cool. So she crawls out, and this whole entire like doorway passageway went all the way across her house into her parents' closet bedroom, which I thought was just so cool. I don't know if her parents knew about this door, but she definitely did, and it just went all the way across her house, which I found really cool. So every time we went there, we'd play hide and seek and like use that hallway, and like, it was just cool. Just reminded me of that. The other day, I stumbled across this mind-blowing article about how Coraline is actually based on a really old folktale from the 1800s. And so I read the old folktale and compared it to Coraline, and it's literally insane. So today I'm going to be telling you guys this old folktale. Obviously there's a ton of differences, but there's a lot of similarities, and the folktale itself is extremely creepy, just like Coraline is. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be mind blown. Also, I don't know if you can tell, but I tried to dress like Coraline today. This is actually a pajama top, but ever since this was gifted to me, I've constantly thought of Coraline because she has that star sweater that looks very similar to this. So excuse me for being in my pajamas, but it fits the theme. So Coraline was inspired by a folktale called The New Mother that was written in the 1800s. There's also a slightly different story called The Pear Drum, but both are essentially the same tale, just told in slightly different ways. Now, before I get into it, I just want to give you a slight refresher on Coraline. I feel like 95% of you have probably seen the movie, but for those of you who haven't, let me just give you a brief summary. Coraline moves to a new home where she feels bored and neglected by her parents. She finds a bricked up passage in the wall, but during the night it opens up. She discovers a world that seems to be an alternate version of her life, with only one slight difference. Everything is better, and everyone has buttons for eyes. Coraline's other mother invites her to stay forever if she lets her sew buttons, and Coraline begins to realize that this alternate universe is a trick to lure her in so her other mother can essentially eat her soul. She also has to rescue her parents from the other mother and make it home safely, relying on her tricks and the help of a sassy talking cat. So that basically sums up the movie, even though there's literally so much more to it, and I covered all of that in my other videos. We like dove deep and talked about the Easter eggs, the conspiracies, the things you never noticed. So if you haven't seen those Coraline videos, definitely check them out, because today we are comparing the old folktale and the Coraline movie. So this folktale from the 1800s called The New Mother was something that parents used to tell their kids when they were misbehaving. And the creepy character that she writes about is very similar to the other mother. So as I tell you this tale, definitely try and find what's similar. Once upon a time, there were two little girls. One was named Blue Eyes and the other was named Turkey, which sounds super weird, but here's the explanation for why they were named that. So the girl named Blue Eyes was named because she had beautiful blue eyes, and Turkey was named after the red dress that she always wore, and they lived in an isolated little house with their mother and their baby brother named Arthur. One day, Blue Eyes and Turkey went for a walk when they saw a gypsy girl playing on a little drum, and as this gypsy girl played on her drum, this little mechanical mechanical man and little mechanical woman came out of the drum and started dancing on it as she played. So Blue Eyes and Turkey were instantly amazed by this. They had never seen anything like it before. It was like the drum was somehow enchanted, and they begged the gypsy girl to give it to them. The gypsy girl laughed at them and said she would only give them the drums if they would become naughty girls. She said, "Come back tomorrow and tell me how horrible you were to your mother, and then I will give you the drum." So essentially she's saying the girls can only earn this drum if they are so bad when they get home. So when Blue Eyes and Turkey got home, they tried to behave as badly as possible. They started shouting, they spilt their food all over the floor, they drew on the walls in crayon and refused to go to bed. The two sisters did everything they could to upset their mother. So the next day they hurried back to the gypsy girl with the drum and told them all the things they did, hoping she would give them this enchanted item. But the gypsy girl just laughed at what they said, and she said, "Well, you just weren't bad enough. You're gonna have to be far worse than that if you want to earn this drum." So the two sisters went home trying to be even worse than they were the day before. They threw their cups on the floor, they walked in the mud and took it all through the house, they pulled the flowers out of the garden. They also let the pig out of the pen and let him run away. And their mother was just so horrified by their behavior, because usually they were such good girls, but for some reason they were just being terrible. So their mother pleaded with them and said, "If you don't stop this behavior, I will go away and take your brother with me, and you will get a new mother, one with glass eyes and a wooden tail." And this scared Blue Eyes and Turkey, but they didn't think their mother was telling the truth. They didn't really believe that their mother would go away. So the next day, the two girls got up super early and ran to the gypsy girl, hoping they did enough to get the drum. When they found her, there she was, playing with the drum, and the mechanical man and woman came out and started dancing. So the girls told her all that they did, and the gypsy girl said, "Nope, you will still have to do much worse than that." It was like nothing they did was horrible enough to earn this drum. So the two sisters went home again, promising themselves they would be just absolutely terrible, more than they had ever been. This time they broke the kitchen table and the chairs. They smashed all the fine china and ripped their clothes to shreds. They beat up their baby brother, they started hitting their mother. So their mother began to cry and beg to them, and she said, "If you don't stop being so naughty, I will have to go away, and instead you will have a new mother with glass eyes and a wooden tail that has to live with you forever." However, all the two girls kept thinking about was this drum. It was like they couldn't care about anything else except for getting this enchanted item. So the next morning, before their mother was awake, they ran out again to find the gypsy girl, hoping this time they did enough. When they found her, they told her all the bad things they have done. But this time, she noticed that the gypsy girl didn't have the drum with her. In fact, it was absolutely nowhere to be seen, so they said, "Gypsy girl, where's your drum? Haven't we earned it?" And the gypsy girl just laughed and said, "It's gone. Me and my family are moving away." So the girls were horrified. They were crying. They kept saying, "We did what you told us to do." And the gypsy girl replied, "Yes, I know. You have been really naughty, and now your mother has gone far, far away, and now instead you have a new mother with glass eyes and a wooden tail." So the girls cried and rushed home as fast as they could. But when they got there, their mother and their little brother was gone. So they thought maybe they went to the grocery store, maybe they were out for a walk, maybe they weren't actually gone. But lunchtime came around and they still weren't back. And Blue Eyes and Turkey began to feel very lonely and scared. So they decided to walk around their town to try and find their mother. They did this for a few hours until the sun started coming down, and then they had to go back to the house, hoping she would be there. When they got back to the house, all of the lights were off. But when they peered through their window, they could see a new mother there. A new mother with glass eyes that were glowing in the firelight. And they could hear her wooden tail thumping on the floor behind her as she walked. So this was basically the end of the story. It showed that they were now stuck with this new mother that looked super creepy. And I feel like if you really look at the Coraline story and this old folktale, both stories show that you should really be thankful for what you have instead of seeking more. Because in Coraline, she really loved the other world, wanted to stay there. It was so much better than her normal house and her her normal parents, and that's where things went wrong. And in this folktale, these girls had a house, a loving mother, a loving brother, and they still wanted more. So in both stories, you see the greed, and it almost shows like you don't really know what you have until it's gone. So I'm really curious to hear what you guys think about this old folktale. I read that Coraline was slightly inspired by this old story, although I don't know if that was completely confirmed, but I can definitely see the similarities, especially because it's a creepy new mother that arrives just like in Coraline. This video is gonna be about people who experienced glitches in the Matrix. And if you've never heard of that saying before, it's basically when someone experiences something very strange and puzzling that doesn't have a logical explanation. The name comes from the movie The Matrix, where a glitch drew someone's attention to the fact that they were in a simulation. So this theory is supposed to mean that everything around us is not really real and we're just in a giant simulation. Simulation? Am I saying that wrong? So for example, if you see two or more of what looks like the exact same thing, that would be considered a glitch in the Matrix. And there are so many pictures that people have taken of this. Or if you just have a weird deja vu moment, or like I said before, if something weird happens to you that has no possible logical explanation, that might be a glitch in the Matrix. So let's first talk about the Coraline glitch. It's about this mother who was watching Coraline with her 5-year-old son. Now this was his favorite movie. They would watch it all the time, multiple times. They basically knew the whole movie by heart. And I mean, same. The first 3/4 of the movie was normal until they got to the scene where the other mother becomes a spider and is freaking out in her metal web. As they were watching this particular scene, they started to hear this weird feedback noise coming from their speakers. And then they heard a soft male chuckle. And if you guys have ever watched this movie, which all of you probably have, during this scene, there is no chuckling in the background from a male voice. The mother said it almost sounded like a man might chuckle if he was trying to be as quiet as possible. And it completely sent shivers down her spine. I mean, imagine watching a movie that you're so familiar with and suddenly there's this one scene that just has something you don't recognize. All of a sudden, the speakers made this large cracking noise, and clearly coming right out of their speakers came this loud male voice that said, "Well, howdy!" right over top of the movie while this whole spider scene is happening. She said it sounded like a man who was in his 50s, and while this was happening, the movie never stopped, it never skipped. It just sounded like a man talking over this particular scene. So they rewound the movie and played that scene again, and the chuckling and the voice was gone. And to this day, she said it still bothers her that she'll never know where the source of this voice was coming from. Now, this story was posted on Reddit, and a lot of the comments under this post was saying that maybe she got some weird feedback from like someone else's house or phone or walkie-talkie. I don't know, somehow someone else's voice might have happened to come out of her speakers by accident. But still, what a creepy experience. So let's get right into this video about more secrets in Coraline. The first one is about the years on the candy jars. When Coraline returns to Spink and Forcible's apartment in the real world, Miss Forcible opens this trunk that says Special Reserve on it, and it reveals these 3 different bowls of taffy. Now, each bowl is labeled with the year. We have 1921, 1936, and 1960. Now, fans think these years in old taffy correspond to the years in which the 3 ghost children first went missing. So that could mean that the bowl that Miss Forcible brings to Coraline while she's having her tea could have been labeled 2009 if the other mother got what she wanted. That's terrifying. Next, we have one about the welcome home cake. While the welcome home cake the beldam makes for Coraline looks delicious, the piping on top may hold a clue about the beldam's true intentions. Now, if you look at the welcome home, the O actually has a double loop. According to graphology, a double loop on a lowercase o means that that person who wrote it is lying. And there is only one double loop, meaning she is welcome, but she's not home. The next interesting thing is a lot of places that the other mother stands, she has horns behind her from the house decor. Before the beldam transitions into her horrifying needle spider form, the movie's setting drops several subtle hints that she may not be as benevolent as she seems. Like there's one where she's standing in front of a mounted animal head that gives her horns. When she's sitting in front of the insect furniture, it also gives her horns. It's sort of telling the audience, hey, she's not what she seems. Now, while I was doing research for this video, I actually found a lot of people that figured out how to actually summon this tiny door in their house to go and meet their other mother. So many posts were saying that all you have to do is take a crayon or a marker or some sort of writing thing, draw a tiny door on your wall with a little doorknob, knock on it 3 times and say, I want to see my other mother. And apparently when the clock strikes 12, you'll be able to open that door and go and meet your other mother in this other world. That's terrifying. I feel like I want to try this so bad, but I also don't. I'm kind of scared. I also don't want to ruin the walls. That's the other thing. Don't try this at home without parent permission, because I don't want your parents to see that you've drawn a tiny door and they're like, did Jessii tell you this? Did she tell you to ruin your house? So just be cautious about doing it. Next, we have a fairy ring in Coraline. When Coraline first explores the grounds of the Pink Palace, she embarks on a hunt to find a secret well. Now, she unknowingly steps right on top of it, although the spot is already marked out with a ring of small orange mushrooms. Now, people think that this circle might be a fairy ring, and I've done a whole other video about how scary fairy rings can actually be. According to legend, these rings can be very dangerous to anyone who disturbs or steps inside of them, just like Coraline does. And some claim trespassing inside a fairy territory could result in anything from bad luck to a curse, which may explain the mysterious and frightening events that occur after Coraline accidentally ventures inside the ring. What if everything that happened in this movie is all because she stepped inside this fairy ring? That's pretty scary to think about. Next, let's talk about Mel's crooked nose, aka Coraline's mother. The Belle Dance strives to make everything perfect for Coraline in the other world. I mean, she gives her delicious food, she gives her basically anything she wants. She makes her other world so much better. So if you notice, she also fixes her real mother's crooked nose. So in the real world, her mother's nose is kind of like off to the side, but in the fake world, she makes sure that she straightens it out to look absolutely perfect and beautiful. Next, the pattern on Coraline's chair might actually be a reference to The Shining. The back of the chair where Coraline's doll sits features a small flower-shaped pattern. This small design is nearly identical to the one on the back of Jack Torrance's chair in The Shining. And this is seen during his all work and no play classic scene. So it'd be so interesting if they actually did this on purpose. Next, we have Coraline's praying mantis on her side table in her bedroom. The Belle Dance specifically designs the other world to contain all of Coraline's favorite things. Many of her toys and trinkets seen in the beginning of the film return as magical creatures in the other world. So if you see that praying mantis beside her picture frame, later on in the film it becomes that giant praying mantis in the garden, which is super eerie. I actually never noticed that until now. Next, we have that Mr. Bobinski's house actually mimics the circus in the other world. He has a lamp draped with a sheet that creates the illusion of a circus tent, while the hen standing on a stack of boxes hints at the innovative popcorn machine that appears in the other world. I never noticed this either. That is so intriguing. This other one also blows my mind. She actually has a picture frame beside her bed that shows that she had brown hair before she moved. Now, we're all used to Coraline having that bright blue awesome hair, but apparently it wasn't always like that. Now, obviously her father's hair is brown, her mother's hair is black, and a family photo in her parents' bedroom gives us a glimpse at pre-dyed Coraline. The picture is taken at the Detroit Zoo, where they bought the infamous snow globe, and it shows a younger Coraline with this brown hair. Some fans have theorized that Coraline's parents may have let her dye her hair blue to make up for their move to Oregon, which could be a pretty good theory because she really didn't want to move away from her friends, so maybe they were like, hey, we'll let you dye your hair blue if you do this for us. Okay, so let's get right into this story. It is called Button Eyes. So I'm sure all of you watching right now know by now what Tinder is, even if you've never used it before. I told you guys a long time ago that my husband Ty and I met on a dating app back in 2017. I just don't think I ever told you what that dating app was, but it was Tinder. And by the way, no, this video is not sponsored. I don't think that they would want to sponsor a video where I'm talking about scary stories about their app. And I was actually surprised at how many Tinder creepypastas I was was able to find online. And honestly, I have always found these online dating apps to be a little bit sketchy sometimes, but I guess I am grateful that I met my husband there, so I can't be too hard on them. But trust me though, I had to get through a lot of very strange messages to find him. Anyways though, like I said, this specific story is about a girl with button eyes whom I thankfully did not meet on there. But there was this creepy legend going around back in 2014 about a strange profile that would appear only after midnight. Now, this profile would mainly target men, and apparently it's this girl with dark brown hair and buttons that cover her eyes, and she doesn't really have a distinguishable expression on her face. It kind of just looks like she's just staring at the camera. And the only thing her bio says is "Ladybird, ladybird, fly away home." And I'll get to what that might mean in just a second. It's pretty weird. But if you're familiar with Tinder, you know that there will be a swipe left option and a swipe right option. If you swipe left, it means you're uninterested and you won't see that person on the app again. But obviously, if you swipe right, it means you are interested. And if the other person ends up swiping right just like you did, you will match and you'll be able to chat. Well, as you can imagine, when people saw this profile suddenly appear in the middle of the night, they were super spooked. So obviously, they would swipe left. The problem was her profile would just appear as the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one, forcing them to just eventually swipe right. Then it would show that they matched and they would eventually get a message from her. But before we talk about what that message said, let's talk about her very strange bio. She's actually quoting an old English nursery rhyme from 1744. And here is how the whole nursery rhyme goes. "Ladybird, ladybird, fly away home. Your house is on fire and your children are gone. All except one, and her name is Anne, and she hid under the baking pan." It's definitely a bizarre nursery rhyme, and it makes you wonder why the heck she would put the start of that in her bio. And by the way, her name was Anne. The story's just called Button Eyes, but the name on her profile was Anne. So after doing some research about this rhyme, I found out that ladybirds are what people in the UK call ladybugs. And they used to be very superstitious bugs, especially for kids back then. So the children are singing the rhyme when a ladybird lands on them in order to make it fly away, as they believe that if they make a wish and the bug will fly away, the wish will become true. And there's also this belief that if you kill a ladybug, it will bring you bad luck. So they sing this rhyme to make the bug return home, as in bringing it back to life. Not sure what that has to do with button eyes, but that's the history of the rhyme. Okay, so you're forced to swipe right, you match with her, and she messages you. Her message will say, "Do my eyes look pretty?" And because they're obviously more scary than pretty, people are unsure how to respond. Is this a trick question? The unfortunate part is, it doesn't really matter what you say. If you tell her you find her eyes scary, she gets angry. If you say her eyes are pretty, she gets angry again and accuses you of lying. And this sort of reminds me of the legend that I told about the slit-mouthed woman. Anyways, if you shut down the app and relaunch it, she will be gone and you can resume using the app as usual. And by this point, most users just assume that they're finally safe. They thought they escaped her, but sadly, they're always wrong. They say you know she's coming when you see ladybugs suddenly start flying into your windows or crawling on your windowsill, and she won't arrive when you're awake, only when you're sleeping. Some people have woken up to see her standing at the end of their bed in the darkness, just staring at them with her button eyes, and she will ask you again, "Do you think my eyes are pretty?" But no matter what you say, you won't change what she's about to do. The rumor is that she drags you out your window and into the woods to devour you. Another rumor is that she turns you into a doll with button eyes. And no one really truly knows what her motive for all of this is. But as soon as I heard of this story, I instantly thought of the Coraline movies, of course, like I said. But it's so weird how it has nothing to do with them, unless maybe she's like a super fan and put buttons on her eyes and now wants everyone else to have buttons. I have no idea. Alright guys, so let's get right into this crazy Coraline theory. Are you ready to hear what it is? This theory says that the beldam, aka the other mother, and the cat used to be real human beings, and they were married. So I'm gonna refer to them as the woman and the man going forward. So they built this giant house known as the Pink Palace back in the mid to late 19th century, and the whole house was intended to be just for them at first. When we see it in the movie, it's sectioned off into apartments, but they originally built this house intending to start this big family together. They wanted to have a ton of kids and fill up the house. And apparently they eventually do have a child. So we know that she's experienced firsthand being a mother and nurturing someone. She makes dinner and tucks them into bed, hence why it comes so naturally to her when she meets Coraline. She knew how to make kids feel comfortable because she had her own once. But it wasn't long until this man and woman suffered a horrible tragedy together. Their child was out playing and accidentally fell into the well and died. The man and woman were obviously so distraught by this, and they grew very distant from one another as they tried to cope with this loss. Their love died, and then soon they were just these two people living under the same roof. In fact, they slowly began to hate each other because their marriage reminded them of this child that they lost. And that could explain why the beldam showed a dislike for cats in the movie, because the cat was once her husband. But I'll explain that in just a second because I know it's kind of confusing. So this woman went into seclusion. She stayed in her room most of the time. She just sewed all day. She liked to sew. And during that time on her own, she would just daydream about her child. And she created this fantasy world in her mind where they were all reunited again. She wanted to pull all of these things into this world that she knew her child would love. Bugs, gardens, theater shows, yummy food, etc. She even began thinking about spider webs that would have been able to catch her child's fall. Maybe she thought, if only I had been a spider, I would have been able to save her. Well, one day when she wasn't able to cope with her grief any longer, she left her home and flung herself into the well to suffer the same fate as her child. She just did not want to live in a world where her child didn't exist, which is extremely sad. The thing was, the fall didn't kill her at first. She hit her head very hard and was alive for a few minutes. She was just lying there at the bottom of the well looking up at the night sky. Hence the quote from the movie that says that if one was to fall into the well and look up, they would see a sky full of stars even in the daytime. And the stars could also represent how hard she hit her head. So after the woman died, out of respect, he boarded up her room and just left it alone. Back in the day, people used to do that when someone died. They would either lock the door or board up the room so it remained untouched forever, and that could explain why the little door is bricked up when they first arrived at the house. And the man became the only person owning the house until it then became an apartment, and that is where he passed away. And here's where things might get a little out there. His spirit becomes the cat. And this is also why he can come and go as he pleases in her world, because they had that history together. They were married and they had a child together. So there's that connection there. Like, he'll always be a part of her life somehow. They'll always have that attachment even though they hate each other. The thing is, they both reacted to the death of their child in different ways. They handled their grief in different ways. The beldam craves children because she lost hers. So she lures kids into this afterlife realm of hers so she can have their company forever. She wanted this house that she built to end up being filled with kids like they originally planned. And them accepting the buttons represents them agreeing to stay there with her forever. But maybe she's never satisfied with the ones that she keeps because none of them are ever going to be exactly like her child. And her monstrous appearance could also represent the ugliness of her grief. And maybe Coraline reminds her of her daughter the most because Coraline loves adventure. Her daughter was clearly exploring when she fell into the well. But the husband, on the other hand, who is now the cat, is just the polar opposite. He wants to save kids because of what he went through with his daughter. He wants to protect them and keep them safe. And that's why the beldam and the cat butts heads so much, because they just don't agree on what the other one is doing, if that makes sense. And going back to the well, there's a ring of mushrooms around it which represents a fairy circle, and I've done a couple videos on fairy circles and they are thought to lead you into another world when you step into them. So there are some theories speculating that the well is actually the main portal to the other world, hence why the other mother was transported into this dream realm of hers after she fell into it. And like I said, evidence for this is when YB says that if you fell to the bottom and looked up, you would see a sky full of stars in the middle of the day. The other world is set at night with a sky full of stars. But if that theory is true, then Coraline gave the other mother the key at the end of the movie. So what do you guys think about this crazy theory about the beldam and the cat once once being married, they had a kid together, lost that kid. Like, it's a really interesting theory, but I think if you take in all the aspects of the movie, it doesn't quite make the most sense. I feel like it leaves a lot of plot holes, a lot of questions. But the reason why I wanted to make this video is because no matter how crazy the theory is, I love them. I love how creative they get. I love talking about them, hearing about them. So let me know your thoughts down below.